Welcome back to Gun&ShotTV. This is Chris. Today I was going to talk about, I took a concealed carry class and I had the basics of pistol shooting. Supposedly, the problem with a class when it's a classroom setting is it's hard to do gun manipulations and explain exactly what's going on. So I kind of figured I would try and give a little bit of a basic on how to shoot a pistol. Pistol shooting, it's evolved a lot. If you look at what training used to be, you would have, in the 50s, police were trained not to use the sights. They were trained to point shoot. So, if you look at an old G-Man movie, what you'll see them do is you'll see them draw their gun, they'll draw their revolver, they'll kind of squat down, they'll cup their fist in front of their heart, and they'll kind of just not even look at the sights and just pull the trigger, point, shoot. And that was what was trained. You can be decent at point shooting if you train to point shoot. And, and the gun points well, and that means, you hold it in your hand, and as you naturally hold your hand, the gun goes where your hand is pointing. So you'll see that in old movies, and the idea was if you clench your fist, you get a sympathetic reaction. This hand's going to grip tighter. You put it in front of your heart, you lessen your chance of getting shot in the heart because you got your hand in front. So now you get shot in the hand and the heart. Doesn't seem like a good idea to me. If you crouch down, ideally you'll have a more stable platform and you'll make a smaller target. That's kind of shitty advice. I don't recommend anyone shoot like that unless you're in a G-Man movie from the 50s time period. So what I'd recommend you do if you want to shoot a pistol and you have absolutely no idea what you're doing is we'll start from the bottom. We'll get your stance. This can kind of be whatever's comfortable for you. So a lot of people say a power stance. Like pretend you're going to hit somebody, jump in the air, see where your feet land. I kind of do shoulder width apart, a little bit wider maybe. My right foot's cocked out. Whatever's comfortable for you. But you want to feel stable. Pretend you're going to punch somebody or somebody's going to punch you. How would you want to be standing? You want your weight kind of balanced so you can react because that recoil is going to push back on you. So, you want your stance so you're solid. From there, the next thing you got to worry about is your grip. How are you going to hold the gun? This is what's called teacupping. It's like holding a teacup. This doesn't do anything for you. This is garbage. Don't do that. In my concealed carry class, they recommend that for pistols. That's stupid. You have no control over the gun with this hand. You just have support. Recoil is just going to go right off there. So what I recommend you do, and it's a little different for revolvers and for auto pistols, so I'll show you a little bit on a Glock what that looks like. Put your hand, wrap it around. Obviously my finger's behind the trigger here because I'm not putting it on the trigger, but you're going to take that hand, you're going to take this hand, and I like to always use my index finger on my left hand and grab the front of the trigger guard. Some guns it's not as easy to do. Some guns it doesn't really give you a lot. But I find that it keeps the recoil a little bit more manageable and gives you a better hold. Wrap this hand around the other hand. Grab that trigger guard if you can. And with a revolver, usually what you want to do is cross your thumbs like this. So you get a better grip. Depending on the revolver too, sometimes if you're that far in front of the trigger guard, you'll get lead spitting out. So sometimes the finger on the trigger guard isn't necessarily a good idea on a revolver. It depends on the revolver. It depends on your particular hand shape and everything. But you do want to be wary. Some revolvers will spit lead. In theory, directly below. It shouldn't. But anyways, moving on. So now you've got your grip. You're holding it. I like to push out with my right arm and pull back. So I'm pushing out, pulling back. That's isometric tension. Now you're pushing and pulling against your own strength, so you're going to be balanced, and for that recoil, you'll be able to put it right back down where it needs to be. With your thumbs crossed, you can reach up and cock it for single action, or you can do it however you really want. It's more comfort in the size of the gun, but that's kind of what you want. You want that push-pull. Let me switch my Glock, and I'll show you what that looks like. This is the same thing. Now, Glocks are nice. They actually have stippling on the front here. So you can grab it with this hand. Obviously, you want a high grip. So as much recoil from that barrel is going directly into your hand and not making the gun flip back. So high grip, I like to put this thumb straight out, grab this hand, put these fingers around those fingers, and then I'll put my finger on the front of this trigger guard, and you can see it's actually grooved there, so you can get a better grip for that finger, and that really makes it a lot more controllable. Then you want your thumbs straight forward. Now there's some people that do the curled down grip or whatever. If you look, Glocks even have the thumb indent there, so specifically so you can do it that way. I find that's really manageable. So now you've got your grip, you've got your arms figured out, you're pushing and you're pulling. At that point, you're good to shoot. Your body's in pretty good shape. Now we got to worry about some other little things. You've got your trigger, which is here. Obviously, this gun's unloaded and everything. I'm going to mess with the trigger, but it's unloaded. There's no magazine in it. There's some different ideas on where you should put your trigger finger. I like to put the edge of the trigger on this joint here, so it's going to be kind of hard to see, but that's where my trigger is. It's right on that joint. So I have that trigger stuck on that finger, and there's no way that it's going to slip. If you try and do it with the tip of your finger, you're going to have less force, less power on that finger, and it's also going to be, you're going to have a different finger hold on the trigger every time. The index on that joint, you're going to be a lot more stable, and you're going to be essentially shooting the same way every time. So, I mean, that's a lot of this, is it's tricks to make sure that you're consistent. Because if you're consistent, you know, you can adjust sights, you can do a lot of stuff. As long as you're consistent every time, all those adjustments will work. If you're holding the gun different every time, you're just wasting time. So, you got your trigger on your finger on your trigger. Got your gun held securely. Now you're ready to shoot. What you really need to do is make sure you have your sights lined up. I'm going to put the gun down for a second here. With your sights, the trick that I like to tell people is simple to remember, is equal height, equal light. You want across the top of the sights to line up. So you want the front post, the rear sights to be lined up across the top. Then you'll find that the front sight blade is narrower than the rear sight. And that's to allow you to see where it is positioned in that notch. So you want equal height across the top, and you want equal light. You want there to be the exact same amount of gap on either side of that blade in those rear sights. So at that point, we now have the sight picture. Now that we have the sight picture, all we need to do is gently squeeze the trigger. Now the trick with squeezing the trigger is you want to go slow. And you also want to kind of monitor your breathing. Now if you're in a self-defense scenario, something like that, you're not going to have time to worry about your breathing. You're just going to be aiming for center mass. But if you've got the time to think about it, what you want to do is you want to breathe in and out. And you want to pick a low point when your sights are settled. So usually that's when you've exhaled. Some people do it mid-breath. They'll just stop breathing. But one way or another, you want to monitor your breathing and make sure that you're at a good point to shoot. If you're inhaling or exhaling, your whole body is moving and moving like that. So you want to find that nice point to shoot at. So exhale, stop mid-breath, something like that. And then you're just going to gently squeeze the trigger. You want to surprise break. Like I said, this is unloaded. But how it's all going to look is we'll just gently squeeze the trigger, push, pull, like that. And it should just go off. You shouldn't jerk the trigger. If you do that, the whole gun's going to move on you. So put it all together. We've got our decent stance. We've got our arms. We should be pushing and pulling. We should have this hand supporting this hand. I like to grab the front of the trigger guard because it gives me a little bit better recoil control and really locks the gun in place. Got your thumbs forward. You don't want to mess with your slide stop. You want to keep your thumb away from that. High grip. Line up the sights. Equal height, equal light. Monitor your breathing. And then you're going to gently pull that finger that's on the trigger, and it should just go off. So that's the basic of pistol shooting. Now, everybody's got different techniques. Everybody's going to tell you something a little different. But if you have absolutely no experience with a pistol, that's what I would recommend you start with. I mean, you can get a million different opinions too, so don't necessarily take my word for it, but like I said, I know in my concealed carry class, I had this discussion with 4 or 5 people afterwards because we went over it, but we went over it really fast, and there was some bad info like teacupping. That's never a good idea. So that's the basic of pistol shooting. If you guys have any questions or comments, or you think that something I did was completely stupid, very well it might be, and I'd love to hear about it. Feel free to leave a comment. But for Gun&ShotTV, this is Chris saying have a rootin' tootin' drunken shooting day. Thanks for watching.